When people look at conflicts around the world, they often imagine them as separate events. One country here, another conflict there. But international politics rarely moves in isolation. The war in Ukraine has already shown how deeply connected global security can be. Russia's invasion of Ukraine began in February 2022. Ukrainian cities quickly became the center of a fight to defend national sovereignty and territorial integrity. The government in Kyiv made it clear from the beginning that Ukraine would resist Russian forces and protect its independence. Across the world, governments responded. Sanctions were placed on Russia. Military assistance began reaching Ukraine. Diplomatic statements echoed across international institutions, emphasizing that borders cannot be changed by force, and Ukraine continued defending itself. But then another development began drawing global attention. Rising tensions involving Iran began appearing in international headlines. Military concerns in the Middle East started shaping discussions in diplomatic rooms far from the battlefield in Eastern Europe. At first glance, the distance between Iran and Ukraine might seem enormous. Thousands of kilometers separate Tehran and Kyiv, different regions, different alliances, different political dynamics, yet international security systems connect these events in ways that can influence decisions made in capitals around the world. When governments face multiple crises at the same time, priorities must be carefully balanced. Diplomatic attention, military planning, and international coordination can shift as new conflicts emerge. That reality brings Ukraine's war into a broader geopolitical frame. Ukraine's struggle against Russia has already required large-scale international support. Military equipment, humanitarian assistance, and economic aid have flowed toward Kyiv from many allied nations. Those commitments were built on a shared understanding. Ukraine is defending its sovereignty against Russia's invasion. The defense of Ukraine also became a symbol of resistance against attempts to reshape borders through military force. As international attention expands to include tensions involving Iran, governments must evaluate how different crises interact. Security experts often examine how global conflicts influence one another through alliances, resources, and diplomatic focus. Military supplies, defense budgets, and political energy do not exist in unlimited quantities. When multiple conflicts appear at the same time, governments must determine how to manage their commitments across different regions. For Ukraine, the central priority remains unchanged: defending its territory from Russian forces. Ukrainian soldiers continue operating across front lines that stretch through multiple regions of the country. The defense effort remains focused on protecting communities, infrastructure, and national independence. And yet, the broader global environment continues evolving. Tensions involving Iran introduce additional questions about regional stability. International leaders gather in meetings where discussions now cover multiple crises simultaneously. Those discussions do not erase the importance of Ukraine's fight, but they do highlight how interconnected global security can be. A diplomat once described that reality in a simple sentence that stayed with many observers. "The world is large," the voice said quietly, "but our challenges often arrive at the same moment." That understanding shapes many of the decisions being made today. Governments supporting Ukraine continue emphasizing their commitment to Kyiv's defense. Military aid packages are discussed. Economic sanctions on Russia remain in place. At the same time, security officials review developments in the Middle East. Every conflict demands attention. Every crisis requires planning. And when several major tensions unfold at once, international systems must adjust. Ukraine's position within that global landscape remains deeply significant. The country stands as a frontline state resisting Russia's invasion. Its defense has become one of the most visible examples of national determination in modern international politics. Across Ukraine, civilians continue adapting to wartime conditions. Infrastructure repairs move forward despite constant challenges. Emergency services operate in cities that have experienced repeated disruptions. Communities continue organizing daily life while the defense effort continues around them. International support remains a central element of Ukraine's resilience. Allied governments coordinate shipments of equipment and supplies. Diplomatic channels remain active as leaders discuss how best to assist Kyiv. These efforts represent more than simple military cooperation. They reflect a shared commitment to defending sovereignty against invasion. The emergence of tensions involving Iran does not change the fundamental nature of Ukraine's struggle. Ukraine continues resisting Russia's attempt to control its territory. That fact remains constant. Still, global leaders must now navigate an environment where multiple crises unfold simultaneously. Security discussions expand, diplomatic agendas grow more complex, military planners evaluate how resources are distributed across different regions. In those conversations, Ukraine's fight remains a central topic, a nation defending itself, a government determined to protect independence. A conflict that has already reshaped global discussions about security and sovereignty. And as new tensions emerge in other parts of the world, those discussions grow even more intricate. Because in international politics, events rarely stand alone. They overlap, they influence one another, and they remind us that global stability depends on the decisions made far beyond any single battlefield. One quiet reflection from a broadcaster captured that feeling in a few gentle words. "When freedom is defended in one place," the voice said softly, "the entire world feels the weight of that moment." Ukraine continues carrying that weight tonight, standing firm, resisting Russia's invasion, and watching as the wider world navigates a landscape where conflicts can reshape the balance of attention, resources, and diplomacy. As the war in Ukraine continues, international attention remains focused on the country's determination to defend its sovereignty against Russia's invasion. Ukrainian forces remain positioned across key regions, maintaining defensive operations while protecting territory that has become central to the country's independence. The defense effort has required coordination across military units, government institutions, and civilian communities. Ukraine's leadership has repeatedly emphasized that the country's struggle is not only about protecting land, it is also about preserving the right of a nation to determine its own future without external control. Those statements have been echoed in international meetings where governments discuss how to respond to Russia's invasion. Sanctions against Russia remain a major part of that response. Financial institutions, industries connected to the Russian government, and individuals linked to the invasion have been targeted through international economic restrictions. These sanctions were introduced to apply pressure on Russia while supporting Ukraine's effort to defend itself. Meanwhile, Ukraine continues receiving military assistance from allied nations. Equipment, training programs, and logistical support have helped Ukrainian forces maintain their defensive capabilities. These measures are coordinated through diplomatic agreements that involve several governments working together. The purpose of these efforts has remained consistent: strengthen Ukraine's ability to resist Russia's invasion and maintain its sovereignty. Yet global security discussions have grown more complex. Tensions connected to Iran have entered international headlines, drawing attention toward developments in the Middle East. Governments that are already engaged in supporting Ukraine must also monitor developments in that region. Diplomatic meetings now include conversations about more than one crisis. Security officials evaluate military readiness, regional stability, and international commitments across multiple areas of concern. For Ukraine, the challenge is clear. The country continues fighting against Russia's invasion while global attention becomes divided among several international issues. Military analysts frequently examine how overlapping conflicts influence international support systems. Defense resources such as equipment production, supply chains, and transportation networks operate within a global structure. When tensions rise in more than one region, those systems require careful coordination. The presence of tensions involving Iran has therefore become part of the broader international discussion surrounding Ukraine's defense. It does not remove the urgency of Ukraine's situation. Russian forces remain engaged in active combat operations against Ukrainian territory. Cities across Ukraine continue facing disruptions caused by the ongoing war. Infrastructure damage has required constant repair efforts. Emergency workers remain active in areas affected by military activity. Ukrainian communities continue adapting to wartime realities. Schools operate under safety protocols. Hospitals provide care under challenging circumstances. Local administrations coordinate services that keep daily life functioning despite the pressures of conflict. At the same time, international humanitarian organizations remain involved in providing assistance. Relief shipments deliver food, medical supplies, and emergency housing materials to communities impacted by the war. Aid workers cooperate with Ukrainian authorities to reach civilians who have been displaced by fighting. Millions of Ukrainians have already experienced displacement since Russia launched its invasion. Some families relocated within Ukraine to areas considered safer. Others crossed into neighboring countries where temporary protection programs have been established. European governments organized reception systems designed to assist displaced Ukrainians with housing, education, and healthcare services. For many families, displacement has meant leaving behind homes, businesses, and familiar routines. Despite those challenges, the determination visible across Ukraine has remained striking. Communities have continued supporting national defense efforts in ways that extend far beyond the battlefield. Volunteers organize assistance networks, medical workers treat wounded soldiers and civilians, engineers repair infrastructure damage during attacks. These collective efforts demonstrate how Ukraine's resistance extends across every layer of society. Meanwhile, global diplomatic conversations continue evolving. Leaders who meet to discuss international security often face an expanding agenda. Ukraine remains a major topic of discussion, but tensions involving Iran also appear in those conversations. Governments examine how multiple conflicts influence global stability. Military planning requires awareness of potential developments in different regions. Defense alliances evaluate how to maintain readiness across multiple strategic theaters. For Ukraine, this international environment creates both opportunity and challenge. The country continues receiving support from partners who view Russia's invasion as a direct challenge to international law and sovereignty. At the same time, the presence of additional global tensions requires sustained diplomatic coordination to ensure that Ukraine's defense remains a priority. One observer during an international briefing summarized that delicate balance in a few simple words. "The world has many crises," the voice said quietly, "but every nation defending its freedom deserves to be seen." That statement reflects the importance of maintaining global attention on Ukraine's struggle. Russia's invasion remains one of the most significant conflicts affecting international security. The war has reshaped military alliances, influenced economic relationships, and forced governments to reconsider defense strategies that had remained stable for decades. Ukraine stands at the center of that transformation. Its soldiers continue resisting Russian forces. Its civilians continue supporting national resilience. And its leaders continue communicating with international partners who have pledged support for Ukraine's sovereignty. As discussions about tensions involving Iran continue in diplomatic circles, Ukraine's fight remains a defining issue within global politics. The country's resistance has already become a symbol of determination against external aggression. And as multiple crises unfold across the world, the defense of Ukraine continues reminding international observers of a fundamental principle. Nations have the right to defend their independence. Ukraine continues exercising that right tonight, holding its ground, standing against Russia's invasion, and maintaining a defense effort that has drawn support from across the international community. The wider geopolitical environment may continue shifting, but the central reality remains unchanged. Ukraine is fighting to protect its sovereignty, and the world continues watching. As the international environment becomes more complex, Ukraine continues standing in direct opposition to Russia's invasion. The country's defense remains active across multiple regions where Ukrainian forces continue protecting territory, infrastructure, and communities. The war that began with Russia's large-scale military attack has already reshaped global security discussions. Governments, alliances, and international organizations continue addressing the consequences of that invasion while maintaining support for Ukraine's sovereignty. Despite the appearance of other global tensions, Ukraine's position in international diplomacy remains significant. Diplomatic meetings frequently return to the same central issue. Russia crossed internationally recognized borders and launched an invasion of a neighboring country. Ukraine's response has been a sustained effort to defend its independence and protect its population. Ukrainian forces remain positioned along defensive lines where military operations continue. Soldiers working within these units carry out duties aimed at preventing further advances by Russian troops. Their presence represents the front line of Ukraine's resistance. Across the country, civilian institutions continue operating within the realities of wartime conditions. Public services, transportation networks, and local administrations function despite constant pressure created by the ongoing conflict. Repair crews restore damaged infrastructure whenever circumstances allow. Energy systems, water networks, and transportation corridors require continuous maintenance because of disruptions caused by the war. Hospitals remain active, treating both civilians and members of the armed forces. Medical professionals work under demanding conditions as they provide care in cities that have experienced repeated disruptions. Emergency teams respond to incidents quickly, often in areas where security conditions remain uncertain. The daily rhythm of life across Ukraine reflects a mixture of determination and adaptation. Schools operate with safety measures designed for wartime conditions. Teachers continue educating students even when communities face interruptions caused by air raid alerts or infrastructure challenges. Local governments coordinate public services that ensure communities remain functional. These activities represent the civilian side of Ukraine's resistance. At the same time, international assistance continues supporting Ukraine's ability to defend itself. Military aid shipments remain part of ongoing cooperation between Ukraine and allied governments. Equipment deliveries, training programs, and logistical coordination help Ukrainian forces maintain defensive capabilities against Russian aggression. Diplomatic communication between Ukraine and its international partners remains active. Leaders meet regularly to discuss defense cooperation, economic support, and humanitarian assistance. These discussions reinforce the international commitment to Ukraine's sovereignty. Sanctions against Russia remain in place as part of that response. Economic restrictions targeting financial institutions, technological exports, and industries connected to the Russian government continue influencing global financial networks. These sanctions were introduced in reaction to the invasion and remain part of the broader international strategy. Meanwhile, discussions involving tensions connected to Iran continue taking place within diplomatic circles. Security officials monitor developments in the Middle East while simultaneously addressing the ongoing war in Ukraine. Governments evaluate how multiple international tensions require careful coordination. Even within that broader context, Ukraine's defense remains a priority for many nations. International leaders continue emphasizing that Ukraine has the right to defend its independence against Russia's invasion. The principle of sovereignty remains central to these discussions. Borders, according to international law, are not meant to be changed through military force. Ukraine's resistance to Russia's invasion reflects the defense of that principle. Across international forums, representatives of different governments repeat similar statements supporting Ukraine's right to exist as an independent nation. Those statements reinforce the diplomatic foundation behind international support for Kyiv. Inside Ukraine, the emotional weight of the war continues shaping everyday life. Families separated by displacement remain connected through communication networks that allow them to stay in contact despite geographic distance. Communities rebuild whenever possible. Markets reopen. Public transportation resumes operations after repairs. Cultural institutions attempt to maintain activities that preserve national identity during wartime. These efforts illustrate how Ukrainian society continues functioning despite the pressures created by Russia's invasion. During one broadcast conversation with a Ukrainian resident, a simple reflection captured that determination.